Hello everyone, my name is Ronak and you're watching Vector Art. In today's video, we will create a dynamic card UI in WPF. The goal here is to create a flexible and visually appealing card-based UI in WPF, demonstrating various design techniques, interactivity, and data binding. The core technology used will be WPF with XAML and C Sharp. The project structure includes a module 1, the base card anatomy, where the objective would be to understand the fundamental building blocks of WPF card, concepts, and a demo. Then we will move to module 2, where we will be adding visual flair, shadows, and advanced stylings to this cards. And the module 3 will be to make this card interactive and clickable. And we will touch on each of these concepts in detail. So hope you will enjoy this video. So let's get started. I have Visual Studio open here on my screen. So let me create a new project and let's select WPF app with .NET framework from my recent templates, and let me provide a name for this project. So let me call this card UI, and let's add WPF card UI and click on create. So we have our project loaded over here. So let me start by creating our first user control over here. So the goal here is to create a reusable simple visual component that we can call a card. So let me go to my project over here and let's click on add and new item, and under WPF let's select user control and let's call this card view and click on add. Now I have a blog where I have the code for all the snippets that we are going to add to our video. So let me copy this, and I'll also leave a link to the description where you can go to this blog, and there are much more detailed explanations on how we can create such a card in WPF. So please do check out this blog. So now I will change this layout to vertical one, and then let me go ahead and place the code over here. So what I have done is I have updated my user control here to have a border, and within a border we have two items. One is the grid, and within our grid we have the image control, which is over here, and then we have the stack panel. So let me go ahead and explain this card view.xaml user control. So first, we have the user control itself. This is the root element. In WPF, a user control is a composite control. It allows you to group multiple existing controls into a single reusable component. This is ideal for our card, as every card will have similar internal structure. So we also have namespaces. These are XML namespaces declarations. They tell the XML parser where to find the definitions for the elements like user control, border, grid we are using. Then we have the border control itself. This is used here as the main visual container for our card. It is excellent for drawing a border around the content, setting background, and crucially defining rounded corners. So here within our border, we have the background, which is set to white. We have the border brush, which is a light gray color. We have the border thickness set to 1 and the corner radius set as 8. This corner radius is the property that will set this rounded edges to our border. Next, we have the grid itself, and the grid is a powerful layout panel in WPF. It allows you to arrange content in rows and columns, similar to a table. We have the row definitions, which defines the rows within the grid. The first row definition is of height auto, and the second one is of height star, which means the second row will take up all the remaining available space, and star is a proportional sizing unit. Then we have the image control, which displays an image. The source right now is set to a placeholder image, and which is a direct URL. Later we will be changing it to a binding. Then the image is set to grid.row of 0. These are attached properties that tell the child control which row they should occupy within the grid. So this is the row of 0, and the second is the stack panel, which is in the row of 1, and this stack panel houses these text blocks which shows the title and the subtitle. So next we will move to the code behind of this user control, which is right now empty and it is meant to be. So let me build this user control or the project so that our card view control is created and we do not have any errors. So next we will move to our main window where we will implement this user control. So to implement this user control, we need a few changes to be done to our main window. So to do that, let's go to our main window over here, and let's change this from a grid to a stack panel. And I have the code for this main window, so let me go to my blog and take the code from there, and I will explain what changes we have made. So let me copy this, and from here let me paste it over here. So all that we did is we added a title to our window, we changed the width and height, we added a stack panel of orientation horizontal, and the horizontal alignment to center, and the vertical alignment also to dead center. Now we have this user controls added to our main window, and this is how you use your custom user control. Because you defined the XML namespace local, you can now refer to the card view using the local prefix, and the margin property adds a spacing between instances of the card. So let me save this, and let's run our application and see this user control in action. So there you go. We have our first user control, this card title layout on our main window. So next, we will talk about adding visual flair like shadows and advanced styling to these cards. Right now, these cards are pretty flat, and it does not show any drop shadow or any borders or any visual appealing to this card. So let's do that. So let's stop the application. And here the goal is to make the card look more polished with shadows and hover effects. So to do that, let me go back to my blog and get the code from there. So now what we will do is take this code from here, and I will explain to you what the changes we did. So let me go here and go to a card view, and here after our before the border, let's paste this user control resources, and also remove all this styling that we added to our border. So we have a simple border and the grid, and within our grid we have the usual controls that we had. So to explain, the user control resources section defines the resources that are available within the user control and its style elements. Resources can include styles, templates, brushes, and etc. Next, we have the style element of target type border. We are defining a style that will be applied to all borders elements within the user control that don't have specific style key applied to them. And the target type border specifies that the style is intended for a border control. Next, we have the setter properties. Specify these setter properties applies a value to a specific property of the target type, which is the border. And we are moving these background, border thickness, and corner radius from here, from the border to this setter properties, so that it can be applied universally to all the target type of border. And then we have the triggers. So we have the trigger of type effect of type drop shadow. This creates a shadow behind the element of color black, and opacity 0 0.1, and blur radius of 5, and the direction of 270, and shadow depth of 2. Then we also have the triggers for is mouse over, and this trigger activates when the is mouse over property of the border becomes true. That is when the mouse cursor is over the border. And inside this we have the setters to trigger this effect of drop shadow again when the mouse is over the card. So that is all in all, this is the styles that will be applied to the target type of border. So let me save this and run the application, and let's see this user styles or this polishing of these styles on this card in action. So here you can see now we have our cards with this slight shadow, and when you hover it, this shadow drop shadow effect um, increases, and you can see this animation kind of effect added to these cards. So next we have we will look at how to make these cards more interactive, or we can change it more animated. So here we want the entire card to be clickable. The simplest way is to wrap these cards content into a button, and the style and to style the button to look like our card. So let's do this change. So let me close this card control, or the project running, and save this, and let me go back to my blog, and let me take the resources that I need. So let me take this code from here, which is within our resource, copy this, and let me paste it within the style element. Remember, we before we were applying the style to the border, and now after I've pasted this style, you will see that the target type has changed to a button. I will explain what these changes mean soon. Let me go back, and now instead of a border we have a button. So let me copy this and also remove this code which is of border. And now we have our card control appearing again, and let me walk you through what the changes are. So let's start by this change that we did is the style element and of type button. This style is now targeting the button controls. Next we have the setter property equal to template. This is a powerful feature called control template. It completely replaces the default visual appearance of a control. So by default, a button has a complex template with rounded corners, a border, a visual state for hover, press, disable, etc. We are overriding this to make it look like a card. So if we simply have a button, it will look as a normal button, but we are trying to make it look like the card that we saw before. Our control template contains a border, which is now the visual representation of a button. The template binding syntax. So we have this border, and the template binding syntax is used to bind properties of this internal border, like background, border brush, border thickness, corner radius, and so on. The content presenter. This is crucial within the button, because it is a placeholder that tells WPF where to display the content of the control. For a button, its content property is typically the text you put inside it. For example, but within the button tags, you will write "click me," and that is the text of the button or the content of the button. So this content presenter will help us in displaying that content. In our case, the grid containing the image and the text is the content of our button. So next is the cursor is equal to hand property, um, where it is a standard property for interactive elements, changing the mouse cursor to a hand icon when hovering over the button. Next, we have the triggers property is pressed. So when the button or the card is pressed, is equal to true. A new trigger specifically for when the button is actively being pressed down by a mouse. It changes the background to slightly a darker gray and reduces the shadow depth for a visual feedback. Then we have the button click equal to card click. This is the root of the user control. And now for this user control, the root is the button, and we attached a click event handler directly to it. This is the simplest way to make the entire card clickable. So we have this button instead of the border, and we have attached this card click event to this button. And next, let's go to our code behind, because in our code behind we need to make us a few changes. So before that, let's save this and run this application, and you will see that there will be errors because because the button click event does not exist. So let's address that problem. So let's stop the application and go to the code behind of this user control, and let's make some changes. So here on my blog, I have a few things that I need to add. So let me copy this and go to our code behind and paste this text. So here we already have a card view. So let me remove this constructor, and let me explain what the changes that we have made. So starting with the dependency properties that we have created over here. So the dependency property, for example, the card title property. WPF uses dependency properties for properties that participate in data binding, styling, animation, and templating. They are more powerful and efficient than standard C# properties for UI elements. Then next we have the dependency property dot register. This static method registers a new dependency property. The card title, the name of the property, and the type of string, the data type of the property. The type of card view is the type of the owner class, card view in this case, and the new property metadata default title provides metadata including a default value. The standard C sharp property public string card title acts as a wrapper around the get value and set value methods of the dependency property system. When you set card title equal to my title um, in C sharp or XAML, it's actually setting set value on the dependency property. And when you call the value, or when you retrieve the card title value, it calls the get. So the dependency property, they allow external XAML to set these properties easily, and they enable efficient data binding. The next properties are also similar. They are using the dependency properties, and they are being registered here on the XAML. And we also have these public string properties which are used to get and set the value of the property. Then we have the card click, which is the button click event. And this event handler of the button click does two things. One is it shows the a simple way to display a pop-up message on which card was clicked by using this card title property. And e dot handle equal to true prevents events from bubbling up into a not desired state. So this prevents the event from bubbling up further in the visual tree. If you had, say, the card inside another clickable element, an e dot handle equal to true would stop that parent element from also reacting to this click. So if we had two card elements, if we had a card element within a card element, so when we click this, it wouldn't trigger the other card from showing this message box. So it will only trigger the first event. So now that we have done these changes within our constructor, we have set the title text binding to the text block text property, and the value will come from this card title. And the description is coming from the card description property, which is bound to this text title and description text blocks. So here we are setting the binding. And we also have the image binding over here, which we will talk about soon. But for now, we have this, and let's save this and run the application, and you will soon see how the application looks like. So now you can see we have our values for the cards coming from the bindings, default title and default description, which is the values that are coming from these dependency properties, default description and default title. So lastly, the important note here is this: to make this image source binding. So right now here we see that we have the title bound, and also the description is bound to these two properties, card title and card description. You also see this commented text where I have the image bound to the image, this dependency property called card image source. And here the value is registered with this placeholder text. But yeah, typically you would set this in the XAML over here, where we set the source to this value into a binding of to a property. But right now here we have the source bound to this placeholder text, which we need to soon change. So let's do a few changes to our application to show an image or an icon on our cards. So let me do this by changing a few things. So first things first, let's go to the card view over here and give this a name. Let's call this name img icon. And also let's change this source from a static value to a binding. So to do that, let's me remove this value here, and instead let's use binding, and let's bind it to card image source. And we are done with that. And also we'll make a few changes to these text blocks. So let me go to my code over in this and copy the values that I have over here. So the changes are recorded here. So let me copy this and paste it over here, and I'll explain what I have done. So the source before, it was static, and now I have changed it to card image source. And the same goes for these two text blocks. One is bound to the card title and the card description, and I'll also give this a name that I removed just now. So I'll say this image img icon. And now go back to the code behind, and here we have our proper values set to these bindings. Now that I had removed these names over here, let me put them back. So let me copy this, paste it, sorry, paste it over here, and call them the names that were before. So copy this and paste it to this title block, and next is the description block. So let me save this, and now you can see the errors are gone. So only thing that is left is to set the image. So let me copy this, paste it over here, and call this img icon. Let's change this from text block to image, and instead of the text property, we'll bind it to source property, and the binding will be done to this card image source. And that's it. And finally, I also added this image folder, and within this image I have a few images added. So to our cards we need to add something. So here we have our card view, and within our card view we will add, or we will set these properties. So first property is the card title. Let's do this. Let me go back to my code where I have this values already set. So let me copy this and paste it here. So right now, instead of three cards, we have two cards where the card title is set, card description is set, and the card image source is also set to a placeholder. But let me change this to the image that we have in our um, solution explorer folder here, image. So let me copy this, and instead of that, let's say slash images slash, let me paste it over, sorry, let me take this value, undo what I did, and just paste this value over here. And the next one was also similar. So let me copy this, remove this, and paste the value here, and go to solution explorer, take the value and change this icon over here. And that's it. Let me remove this part, and that should do the trick. And now if I run this application, you should see that the icons, the card title, and the card description will load from the dependency properties that we set. So there you go, guys. Our dynamic card UI in WPF is ready. So here you can see our icons are loaded, and also the card title and description based on our dependency property set value set in our windows dot main window dot ui. So and also when you click on this, it displays which card was clicked, and or the second button also reacts the same. So I'm sure you will find this tutorial incredibly helpful for understanding how to build dynamic and interactive UI in WPF with C Sharp. It touches so many key concepts that are essential for real world applications. I'm excited that to see you create this in your environment. The link to this code is in the description. You can go and click the link to find the source code in GitHub. Also, if you have liked this video, please do subscribe to my channel. It makes me happy and motivates me to create more such videos. See you in the next video. Till then, bye bye.